Hello YouTube, this is Jeff. Wanted to give a quick update on this rocket stove project I've been working on the last few weeks. Really haven't had a chance to mess with it a lot, but I got a couple hours the other day and started cutting this thing apart. As you can see, it's looks a little different from the last time video that I posted on here. If you remember, I had a pellet feed kind of in between the wood chamber and the body of the actual stove, with a small little feed here in the bottom to feed the wood pellets, as they gravity fed down. It worked, but not real efficient. The flame was at the top of the 4-inch tube. Really wasn't getting a real good clean burn. It was doing more smoldering than anything. So cut it all apart. Went ahead, welded this end back up, welded the top of the 4-inch top of the 4-inch pipe up, and figured I'd come up with some kind of hopper system that would go in and out. I could pull in and out of this thing. Here's what's left of it after I pried it out yesterday after my little snafu. But what I've done, my idea behind this thing, maybe point to the side, was the pellets would feed from the side. As you can see, there's like a little trough system, and on this side has like a little grate system that the pellets would kind of gravity feed and drop down through. This side's obvious, one side's obviously off. I had to both sides look like this right here. I did make them out of stainless and just tacked them to some thin like ductwork that I've bent up on my metal brake. I didn't want to use heavy gauge steel again and end up wasting half of it and cutting it up, so I figured I'd just kind of experiment with the feed tube part with just out of basically sheet metal. But I did make the burn chamber area out of some stainless. But in my haste, the night before, I was kind of dry fitting this thing, that where it slides down in, and my theory was to put the wood in the center, and as the wood was burning, I have a slot here and a slot here that would fill up with wood pellets. It'd probably hold, I know it doesn't look very big, but it'd probably hold about four or five cups of pellets. And it burns. But in my haste, instead of cutting these out all the way, making a circular, more of a circular, I left these ends in, which on the back end of the stove it wouldn't have been a big deal, but on the front stove, the front side of this thing, it was a huge deal, because what it was doing was, as the air was coming in, it was trying to use this as the chimney. As you can see, this like waxy looking runny stuff come off of the wood pellets, and you can see the top of my lid here is scorched big time. So this little bitty piece of metal right here that was hanging down was blocking, getting a full flow of air. So basically what happened, down inside, and I lit it, went in the house, grabbed a sandwich for lunch, and glanced out the window, and this whole garage was full of smoke. I mean, these doors are probably, 14 foot high, and probably at least 12 foot, maybe more wide, and it was just billowing out. Smoke was coming out of a little chimney up there, just pouring out. And so I come running out here, disconnected of course this thing just pulls off. I don't have any screws or anything in it. I just slid the exhaust pipe out, grabbed a hold of the base of it, and drug it out here in the middle of the driveway, and let it burn. I'm like, what in the world's going on? Because the first time I burned this thing, it was awesome. It burned great. Just wasn't getting a good hot complete burn with the pellets. So I let it burn down a little bit, and I was trying to, like I said, smoke was just the flames was coming up, this part, and really didn't know what was going on. So I opened my little front here. I made a little kind of vortex type thing, a little funnel for the air, because those pellets really like air. So I kind of made this little gizmo to kind of get some, concentrated airflow going. I was just kind of experimenting with it also, and works pretty good actually. But well, if you can imagine this thing down inside of there, what was happening was this end here was kind of partially blocking that opening, and was pulling the flame up through this instead of going completely through and then up my 4-inch pipe here. And so I just grabbed a tire iron while this was down in there burning. Grabbed a tire iron and just stuffed it up in there and just started jabbing away, and bent that piece of metal up out of the way like that while it was in the stove. And man, I mean, it took off. This thing turned cherry red. Well, not really cherry red, but I mean, it was cooking. It got really, really hot. But yeah, just that little piece of metal restricting. Well, it wasn't restricting. It was just kind of redirecting the flow up into the burn chamber, or into the wood hopper and the pellet hopper instead of the burn chamber. So, not really keen on this idea. Like I said, once I bent that little lip up, it worked great. But this thing, at a full, once it gets full roaring, gets extremely hot. I know I see a lot of designs where this tube, instead of going straight down and then over that way, they're going at a 45-degree angle to more feed towards the 90-degree that's inside of here. This here gets extremely hot. I would not put this stove, even though it's a good probably 10 inches, if not a foot off the surface. This area really, really gets hot because your flame and everything is, here, and then shoots back in, and then up into your chamber here, the actual body of the stove. So the system works pretty good. It works a little too good. So actually, I'm doing away with this idea because it's forcing way too much air in. It's great for starting it. It takes right off, but I need to regulate the flow of air down. So I'm going to put a damper in my 4-inch pipe there that goes up and out. I'm going to put a damper in there, and I think I'm going to do like a swing door. I'm going to put like a little stud here on a hinge, and then just a round piece of metal that will, I can regulate, go up and down like that, because really doesn't need a big opening. And for the top, probably the same thing. Just going to use a flat piece of steel that I can swing over out of the way and then swing back over just for loading wood. This one I'm going to be using in the garage, so I think I'm going to just kind of scrap the pellet idea actually on this stove. Because number one, this thing isn't going to be burning unattended while I'm just going to be using this while I'm out in the garage. working, so it's no big deal to, throw a handful of wood in. Just keep it burning as I'm out here. The pellet idea I had more for the house. So I think I'm going to come up with, because like I said, this thing gets really hot, and if the pellets are exposed to a lot of, real high heat, they tend to smolder. So what I'm thinking about is coming up with a side hopper maybe. You could even put two of them. You put one over on this side, one over on this side. Comes down and then feeds in here to maybe a 45-degree angle on both sides, and then have a little ledge where the wood will rest on the ledge. The pellets will feed in at an angle this way, and get a real, get a real good complete burn on them. Right in the center of that 4-inch chamber. So I found out, I've been learning a lot about these wood pellets. Number one, they like a lot of air, forced air on them. The hotter they burn, the better they combust. If not, they tend to just smolder, and they burn really, really, really hot when you do that. So, and they don't like to be, as far as the hopper goes, they don't like to be within direct heat. If they are, they'll start smoldering actually inside of the hopper, if exposed to really any kind of, heat above what you can comfortably put your hand on. So, yeah, I'm going to fire this thing up. It's a frosty morning here. It was like in the 20s again. Looks like the frost is finally melting off the windshields a little bit, but it was kind of cool. I'm going to fire this thing up, let it burn, a few more times. I'm going to take a wire brush to it, brush it all off, get it cleaned up, get ready to throw a little bit of paint on it. But for all intents and purposes, it works good. If I had it to do over again, I would have done a couple small things a little different on it, which, one is the door system on it and the air feed, and the feed tube or the wood, basically the hopper for the wood and or pellets. But this has been a learning experience. It works good. It'll do good for what I want it for, as far as just burning wood here to heat up the garage. If I want to come out here and tinker on some stuff, when it's cold. I can throw a little bit of wood in it, fire it up. This garage is, I think, 20 or 24 by 24. So I'll see how it heats up. Obviously, it's got drywall on the walls with no insulation, but the top of it's wide open. Goes all the way up to a second floor, which I'm going to eventually finish. I've got all the plywood and everything here, 3/4-inch plywood. But I need to put some new, obviously some new trusses up. These are bowed pretty bad. I think the people that owned this before had a lot stored up there, because they are really bowed down, and another one of those projects I'll get to when I get to. But this thing is not sealed up tight by any means. So I'm going to get another 20-degree morning like it was, colder. Come out here, get a handful of wood, throw in there, fire it up, and get me a thermometer and see how long it'll take to heat all this up, and where it's comfortable enough to work, and go from there. So I think I'm going to pretty much leave this one alone, except for a couple tweaks on the door, the door down here at the bottom, and making me some kind of door up here at top that slides out of the way instead of an actual cap that snaps down and over. I'm going to paint it, clean it up a little bit, and pretty much leave it as is, and I'm going to start on the one for the house. So probably be a few weeks before I get around to it, but when I eventually do, I'll keep you posted. Thanks.